He was paralyzed, yet he did what no other could. Nathan Drake stared out the window of his apartment on New Earth Colony, his wheelchair positioned to catch the golden light of the setting sun. The gleaming spires of the colony's central hub stretched toward the orange sky, a constant reminder of humanity's resilience and ingenuity. 3 years had passed since the accident that took his ability to walk a rescue mission gone wrong. When his ship caught the edge of a spatial anomaly, the display on his wrist computer flashed with an urgent message from the Colonial Defense Force. Despite his medical discharge, they still occasionally consulted him on difficult flight patterns and rescue operations. But this message was different. Unknown vessels had appeared at the edge of the colony's detection range, broadcasting on frequencies never before encountered. Lieutenant Drake, the message read: your expertise in first contact scenarios is required immediately. Transport arriving in 10 minutes. Nathan allowed himself a small smile. They still used his old rank. Even though he'd left active service, the familiar whir of his powered wheelchair filled the room as he moved to gather his essentials. His paralysis might have grounded him, but his mind remained as sharp as ever. The transport arrived precisely on schedule, hovering outside his apartment's landing pad. The pilot, a young woman named Rena Williams, helped him board with practiced efficiency. Good to see you, sir, she said, securing his chair. Commands in quite a state over these visitors. What do we know so far? Nathan asked, his tactical mind already analyzing possibilities. They're calling themselves the Killians, replied as she guided the transport toward the colonial headquarters. Their technology is like nothing we've ever seen. Energy signatures are off the charts, but they're maintaining a respectful distance. The colonial headquarters buzzed with activity. When they arrived, Admiral Jensen, a stern woman with steel gray hair, met them at the landing pad. Drake, thank you for coming. The Killians have specifically requested to speak with someone who understands sacrifice and resilience. Your name came up. Nathan raised an eyebrow. They asked for me by name. They've been monitoring our communications, learning our languages and culture. They seem particularly interested in humans who have overcome significant challenges. The Admiral's expression softened slightly. Your rescue record before the accident is still legendary, Drake, and how you've adapted since, well, it's impressive. They made their way to the communication center, where a large holographic display showed the Killian vessel's sleek, organic-looking ships that seemed to pulse with inter-etal light. A figure appeared on the main screen, humanoid, but clearly alien, with iridescent skin and eyes that reflected light like precious stones. Lieutenant Nathan Drake, the alien spoke, its voice carrying an otherworldly harmony. I am CRA Ven, speaker for the Killian Collective. We have traveled far, seeking those who understand that physical limitations do not define potential. Nathan moved his wheelchair closer to the display. You've come a long way to state the obvious, speaker Ven. The alien's expression shifted in what might have been appreciation. We face a crisis, Lieutenant. Our people are dying from a mural degradation that our technology cannot solve. But in studying your species, particularly individuals like yourself who adapt and thrive despite physical challenges, we believe we have found hope. I'm not sure how my paralysis could help your people, Nathan said carefully. It is precisely your paralysis, and more importantly, how your mind has adapted to it, that interests us. Human neuroplasticity is remarkable. You create new pathways, find alternative solutions. We believe this ability combined with our technology could save our species. The Admiral stepped forward. You're asking for volunteers. We are asking for partners, CRA corrected, beginning with one who already understands what it means to overcome physical limitations. Lieutenant Drake, would you be willing to work with us to help bridge our species and potentially save both our peoples? Nathan looked at his useless legs, then at the alien's hopeful expression. You had me at help, he said. That's what I've always done. Chair or no chair, Kraz's eyes seemed to glow brighter than perhaps. Lieutenant, we can help each other. Your paralysis may have grounded you, but we believe it has also prepared you for something extraordinary. As the implications of this first contact settled over the room, Nathan felt a familiar surge of purpose. His paralysis had closed many doors, but perhaps it had uniquely positioned him to open an entirely new one, not just for himself, But for two species searching for answers in each other's strengths and limitations, the Killian medical bay looked nothing like its human counterparts. Instead of stark white walls and harsh lighting, the chamber pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to respond to Nathan's presence. His wheelchair hummed quietly as he followed Sen through the organic-looking corridors of their vessel. Our neural technology developed along very different lines from yours, CRA explained, her iridescent skin catching the ambient light. We learned to interface directly with our biology, but this intimate connection became our weakness. When the degradation began, Nathan watched as other Killians moved through the ship, their movements growing increasingly unsteady. Some used devices similar to his wheelchair, though theirs seemed to float on fields of energy rather than roll on wheels. How many of your people are affected? The degradation is progressive, CRA replied, her crystalline eyes dimming slightly. It begins in early adulthood. We can slow it, but not stop it. Already 30% of our population requires mobility assistance within a generation. It could be everyone. They entered a larger chamber where several Killian scientists worked at stations that seemed to grow from the floor itself. One of them, introduced as lead researcher Varentile, approached them. His movements were noticeably affected by the degradation, but his eyes burned with intensity. Lieutenant Drake, Varen said, his voice carrying the same heart harmonic quality as Cyrus. We studied how your species adapts to neural damage. The human brain's ability to create new pathways to reroute around damage. It's remarkable, but you, he gestured to Nathan, you've demonstrated exceptional adaptation. Nathan raised an eyebrow. I appreciate the compliment, but I'm still paralyzed, yet you function at a level that surpasses many able-bodied individuals. Ver encountered your mind has created unprecedented neural patterns. We believe combining these adaptations with our technology could lead to a breakthrough. The next few hours were spent in intensive discussion and preliminary tests. The Killian scanning technology was unlike anything Nathan had experienced. Instead of conventional imaging, it created a real-time three-dimensional map of his neural activity that floated in the air between them. Fascinating, Varian murmured. Studying the display, your brain has developed completely new neural architectures to compensate for the spinal injury pathways that shouldn't exist yet function perfectly. That's great, Nathan said, but how does this help your people? CRA stepped forward, her expression intense. We believe we can use your adapted neural patterns as a template. Our technology can interface directly with nervous systems, but we need to understand how to make them adapt rather than degrade. You've already done what we're trying to achieve. As they talked, Nathan noticed something odd about the neural display. Those patterns there, he pointed, they're changing even as we watch. Varen's eyes widened. Your neuroplasticity is active. Even now your brain is literally adapting to understand our technology. As we speak, he turned to CRA. We need to move forward with the interface test. Interface test. Nathan asked. CRA placed a hand on his wheelchair. We've developed a prototype neural interface. Based on your scans, it could allow you to experience our technology directly to help us understand how human adaptation works in real time. But she hesitated. It's not without risk. Nathan looked around the chamber at alien scientists, some already showing signs of the degradation that threatened their species. He thought of his own paralysis, how it had seemed like the end of everything. He cared about what kind of risk are we talking about? The interface could fail, Varen said bluntly. Best case, nothing happens. Worst case, it could affect your existing neural adaptations, potentially reducing your current level of function. Nathan was quiet for a moment, considering. Finally, he smiled. You know what I did before my accident? I flew rescue mission. The really dangerous ones where the risk of failure was high, but the cost of not trying was higher. He straightened in his chair. I'm already paralyzed. If there's a chance, this could help your people and advance our understanding of neural adaptation. I'm in the preparation for the interface. Procedure began immediately as the Killian scientists moved around him, setting up equipment that seemed to pulse with its own life. Nathan felt a familiar permission calm settle over him. This might not be a traditional rescue operation, but in many ways, it was exactly what he had trained for, taking calculated risks to help others. CRA noticed his expression. Your Very calm for someone about to interface with alien technology. Fear doesn't help in situations like this, Nathan replied. Besides, sometimes the biggest limitations aren't physical. They're the ones we put on ourselves by being afraid to try something new. As the interface device was brought forward, a delicate crown of crystalline filaments that seemed to shift and flow like liquid light. Nathan couldn't help but appreciate the irony. His paralysis, which had seemed like the end of his useful life, might have actually prepared him for something extraordinary. Sometimes he realized limitations weren't endings, they were doorways to completely new possibilities. The interface crown was lowered toward his head, its crystalline filaments beginning to glow with increasing intensity. Nathan took a deep breath, remembering all the times he piloted rescue ships into seemingly impossible situations. This might be his most important rescue mission, yet not just for the Killians, but for everyone who'd ever faced limitations they thought they couldn't overcome. Ready, he said as the crown made contact with his skin, and the world exploded into light. The neural interface felt like diving into an ocean of pure light. Nathan's consciousness expanded in ways he never thought possible, his mind merging with the Killian biosystems that pulsed throughout the ship. At first, the sensation was overwhelming, colors that didn't exist in human experience, thoughts that moved like liquid crystal, and an awareness that extended far beyond his physical form. Remarkable. Varen's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. His neural patterns are adapting to the interface faster than we anticipated. The integration is perfect through the interface. Nathan could sense the Killian scientists' amazement. Their neural technology had never synchronized so completely with a non-Killian before, but more than that, he could feel something else, a wrongness in the ship's systems, a corruption spreading through the neural network that the Killians couldn't detect. There's something else here. Nathan projected his thoughts through the interface. Your neural degradation, it's not natural. The pattern is too uniform to artificial seas. Consciousness brushed against his in the interface. What do you mean? In rescue operations, we learn to recognize patterns. Natural disasters have chaos built into them. This is different. Nathan directed their attention through the interface, highlighting the degradations. Spread pattern. This is more like a program, a design protocol spreading through your neural network. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Killian scientists through the interface. Nathan could feel their mixture of horror and dawning understanding. Varen's consciousness surged forward, his thoughts tinged with urgency. He's right, the degradation follows the same pathways as our neural enhancement protocols, the very technology we developed to interface with our ships and cities. But how did we not see this? Because you were looking at it from the inside. Nathan explained, his military training helping him analyze the tactical situation even through the strange new medium of the interface. Sometimes you need an outside perspective to see the pattern. Suddenly alarms blared throughout the ship, the neural interface filled with red warning signals as multiple systems began failing simultaneously. Nathan's enhanced awareness through the interface let him see what was happening. The degradation protocol was accelerating, spreading through the ship's neural network like a viral infection. The revelation must have triggered some kind of fail-safe. Cyrus' thoughts raced. The system is collapsing. Nathan felt the ship systems deteriorating around them through the interface. He could sense the Killian crew members throughout the vessel beginning to lose control of their neural connections. The degradation was spreading faster than ever, threatening to overwhelm everything. Disconnect me, he ordered, now. But your neural patterns are the key to understanding this. Varen protested. If we disconnect you now, if you don't disconnect me, we'll lose everything we've learned. Nathan interrupted. My human neural patterns are isolated from your network. I can still remember what we discovered even without the interface. But if this spreads any further, it could corrupt the very data. We need to find a solution. Crave understood first through the interface. Nathan felt her initiate the disconnect sequence as the crystalline crown lifted from his head. The vast ocean of shared consciousness receded. The return to his own limited perception was jarring, like being plunged into darkness after staring at the sun, but his mind retained everything: the patterns, the connections, and most importantly, the realization that could save the Killian species as the ship systems stabilize around them. Nathan looked at the stunned faces of the Killian scientists. "Your neural technology didn't just evolve naturally, did it?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Someone gave it to you, Kra." And Varen exchanged looks. "It was generations ago." CRA admitted, "Our ancestors found the technology already fully formed. We learned to use it to build our entire civilization around it. We never questioned its origin, because it was designed that way." Nathan said grimly, "The degradation isn't a malfunction. It's a feature. Someone wanted your species to become dependent on this technology, only to have it fail after it was completely integrated into your society." The implications were staggering. The Killians hadn't just stumbled upon a technological event meant they'd been deliberately given a Trojan horse, one that would ensure their species' eventual extinction unless they could find a way to break free from it. "But why?" Varen asked, his usual scientific detachment shaken by the revelation. "Who would do this?" "That's what we need to find out," Nathan replied, his tactical mind already forming plans. "But first we need to work on a solution. My neural patterns might be the key, but not in the way we thought. We don't need to adapt your people to work better with this technology. We need to help them break free from it entirely." CRA moved closer to his wheelchair, her crystalline eyes intense. "How our entire civilization depends on neural technology. Our ships, our cities, our very way of life, by doing what humans do best," Nathan said firmly. "Adapting, starting over, finding new ways to solve old problems." He gestured to his wheelchair. "When I was paralyzed, I didn't look for ways to make my damaged neural pathways work better. I learned to function differently. That's what your people need to do. Not enhance your connection to this corrupted technology, but learn to live without it." The chamber fell silent as the Killians absorbed this radical proposal through the remnants of the neural connection. Nathan could still feel their mix of fear, hope, and determination. They faced a monumental task, not just fighting against physical degradation, but completely reinventing their civilization. "It won't be easy," he acknowledged, "but nothing worth doing ever is, and he won't have to do it alone." As the Killian scientists began to mobilize, processing this new understanding of their crisis, Nathan couldn't help but appreciate the irony. His paralysis, which had seemed like the end of his useful life, had given him the perfect insight to help save an entire species. Sometimes the greatest strengths could emerge from what appeared to be devastating weaknesses. The next week, aboard the Killian vessel, was a blur of activity. Nathan worked tirelessly with Theon and the science team, using his unique perspective as both an outsider and someone who had overcome neural trauma to help design a transition plan. But not everyone welcomed their revolutionary discoveries. "You're asking us to abandon everything we are." Elder Coordinator Nexus thundered, his holographic form dominating the ship's conference chamber. The Killian Leadership Council had convened an emergency session upon learning of their findings. "Our neural technology is what makes us Killian." "With respect," Elder Nathan countered from his wheelchair, "your technology is what's killing you, and it was designed to do exactly that." Through the remnants of his neural interface experience, Nathan could still sense the undercurrents of fear and resistance among many of the Killian leaders. Their civilization had been built on the foundation of neural technology. The prospect of abandoning it was terrifying. Cyrus stepped forward, her iridescent skin pulsing with emotion. "We've confirmed Lieutenant Drake's analysis. The degradation protocol is accelerating. We estimate less than a year before critical systems begin failing across our entire network. Then we find a way to fix the protocol," another council member argued. "We don't throw away generations of advancement because one human suggests we should." Suddenly the ship's alarms blared. Red warning lights pulsed through the organic walls as multiple systems began failing simultaneously. Nathan felt his wheelchair's power fluctuate. Something was interfering with all powered systems, not just the Killian neural tech. "We're being attacked," Varen announced, his fingers dancing across a mural interface panel. "Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace, their energy signatures, they match the original source of our neural technology." Nathan's tactical training kicked in. "They're here to finish what they started," he realized. The degradation protocol was taking too long, so they've come to accelerate the process. The ship rocked with the first impact. Through the viewing screen, Nathan could see the attacking vessels sleek predatory shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their weapons fired beams of energy that didn't just damage the ship's hull, but infected its neural systems, spreading corruption like a digital plague. All hands abandoned neural interfaces. Nathan commanded, his voice carrying the authority of years of rescue operations. Full manual control, only manual control. CRA looked horrified. We haven't operated without neural guidance in generations. Then today is a good day to learn, Nathan replied grimly. Varen, can you get me to the flight deck? If these ships are spreading the same kind of corruption that's been killing your people, we need to fight them differently. The journey to the flight deck was chaotic all around them. Killian crew members struggled to operate systems manually, their movements clumsy and uncertain without neural assistance, but they were trying, and that was what mattered. The flight controls are neural-based. Varen protested as they reached the bridge without the interface. Then we improvise. Nathan interrupted. Get me as close to the control panel as possible. Remember what we learned about my neural patterns, how they adapted to work around damage. Let's put that to the test. Understanding dawned in Syra's eyes. You want to interface directly with the ship without the neural crown? That's never been done. First time for everything, Nathan said, positioning his wheelchair next to the flight controls. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? I'm already paralyzed. The enemy ships were closing in, their corrupt energy weapons tearing through the Killian vessel's defenses. Nathan placed his hands on the control panel, closing his eyes and remembering the sensation of the neural interface. The way his consciousness had expanded, adapted, found new pathways to achieve its goals. For a moment nothing happened. Then slowly the panel began to glow beneath his touch. His adapted neural patterns, already rewired to overcome his paralysis, found a way to communicate with the ship systems, not through the corrupted neural network, but through a more basic primal connection. Impossible, Varen breathed, watching as the ship responded to Nathan's commands. He's bypassing the neural network entirely. Nathan didn't respond, too focused on the task at hand. Flying a ship through neural connection was nothing like traditional piloting, but in some ways it reminded him of his rescue missions, the need to fuel the ship as an extension of himself, to anticipate and react without conscious thought. The enemy ships, expecting to face confused and corrupted opponents, weren't prepared for the unconventional attack. Nathan used the Killian vessel's organic nature to his advantage, performing maneuvers that would have been impossible with traditional technology. Without the neural network to restrict its movements, the ship could push beyond its normal limitations. Other ships are following our lead, CRA reported, watching as more Killian vessels switched to manual control, breaking free from the corruption spreading through their neural networks. They're adapting your technique. The battle raged for hours, but in the end, the attackers were forced to retreat. They had expected to find easy prey, a civilization crippled by their long-term sabotage. Instead, they found something they hadn't counted on: the incredible adaptability of both human and Killian spirit. As the adrenaline of battle faded, Nathan finally released his connection to the ship's controls. He was exhausted but triumphant around him. The Killian crew was starting to realize what they had accomplished, not just surviving an attack, but proving they could function without their neural technology. This is just the beginning, he told them, watching the enemy ships disappear into hyperspace. They'll be back, but now we know we can fight them. More importantly, we know we can change. The Killian Leadership Council, who had witnessed everything, were silent for a long moment. Finally, Elder Nexus spoke, his earlier opposition replaced by grudging respect. Perhaps we have become too dependent on what we thought made us strong. Lieutenant Drake has shown us that true strength lies not in technology, but in our ability to adapt and overcome. As the Killians began the monumental task of restructuring their society, Nathan couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the greatest victories came not from fighting your limitations, but from learning to work with them, finding strength in what others might see as weakness. His paralysis had taught him that, and now he had helped an entire civilization learn the same lesson. 6 months after the battle, the Killian home world looked remarkably different. Where once crystal spires had pulsed with neural energy, now stood new structures that combined traditional architecture With mechanical innovation, Nathan watched from the observation deck as teams of Killians worked to retrofit their cities, learning to rely on their own capabilities rather than neural interfaces. The last neural core will be deactivated today, CRA announced, joining him at the window. Our people have adapted faster than anyone expected. Nathan smiled, remembering his own journey of adaptation after his injury. Sometimes having no choice but to change makes the impossible possible. The transformation hadn't been easy. Many Killians had struggled with the loss of their neural connections, much as he had once struggled with the loss of his legs, but they had persevered and in doing so discovered strengths they never knew they possessed. The research team has made a breakthrough, Varen called out, entering the observation deck with excitement visible in his crystalline eyes. Using the data from your neural patterns, we've developed a new interface system, one that enhances natural abilities rather than replacing them. Nathan turned his wheelchair to face the scientist. Show me. Varen activated a holographic display revealing schematics for a device that looked nothing like the old neural technology. It's based on how your brain adapted to paralysis. Instead of creating artificial pathways, it helps the body develop its own solutions. We're calling it the Drake Protocol. The first trials have been remarkable, CRA added. Those affected by the degradation are showing signs of natural neural regeneration. Their bodies are learning to function independently again, just as yours did. A chime sounded throughout the complex, the signal for the final deactivation. Through the window, they watched as the last neural core's light faded to darkness. But instead of the chaos many had feared, the city continued to function smoothly, its people moving with newfound confidence in their own abilities. Your old enemies will notice this change, Nathan reminded them. They'll realize their weapon no longer works. Let them come, CRA replied. With quiet determination, we're stronger now than when we relied on their technology. We've learned that true advancement comes not from external power, but from overcoming our own limitations. Nathan felt a familiar sensation, the same one he'd experienced during his most challenging rescue missions. You know, he said thoughtfully, I used to think my paralysis was the end of my useful life. Instead, it prepared me for something greater than I could have imagined. Varen approached with a small device in his hand. Speaking of preparation, we have something for you, a prototype based on our combined research. The device was elegant in its simplicity, a thin band of crystalline material size to fit around his waist. What is it? Nathan asked, though part of him already knew. A neural bridge, CRA explained, not to replace what was lost, but to help your body remember how to adapt, like you helped us do with their help. Nathan attached the device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then he felt it, not the return of lost sensation, but something new. His body was learning, adapting, finding new ways to accomplish old tasks. Slowly, carefully, Nathan rose from his wheelchair. His legs trembled with effort, but they held. He wasn't healed. The damage to his spine remained, but like the Killians, he had found a new way forward. How does it feel? CRA asked. Softly. Different, Nathan replied, taking an unsteady step. Not like before. But maybe that's the point. We're not meant to go back to what we were. We're meant to become something new. As if to emphasize his words, a message came through from the Defense Command. Long-range sensors had detected ships approaching, the same ones that had attacked them before, but this time the Killians were ready. Their vessels now operated through a combination of manual skill and adapted technology, moved to defensive positions they never understood. Nathan said, watching, a preparation strength isn't about having no weaknesses, it's about learning to work with them, to adapt and overcome. That's what makes humans remarkable, and now it's what makes the Killians remarkable too. The enemy ships appeared in the sky, their dark forms threatening against the sunset, but where once they had expected to find a civilization crippled by dependency, they found something else, a people transformed by adversity, stronger for having faced their limitations. Nathan stood with his new allies, ready to face whatever came next. His paralysis had led him here to this moment, proving that sometimes what we think of as our greatest weakness can become our greatest gift to others. As the first shots were fired in the battle to come, he knew that whatever the outcome, both humanity and the Killians had already achieved their greatest victory, learning that true strength comes not from avoiding limitations, but from embracing and transcending them.